What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
At the beginning of the 2000s in BMW conceived to create a successor to the E24 model, a large coupe of the Grand Touring class, which appeared in the 70s of the last century. The new model absorbed fresh solutions of the time, even if not all of them were to the liking of fans of the brand even then. On the one hand, the shortened Platform 5 was a very good solution from the point of view of technology. On the other hand, the design was considered by many to be specific, especially the rear part, made in the spirit of the Series E63. However, it had little influence on the overall coolness of the big coupe, and in 2003 to 2010, the 6 went around the world in circulation of more than 100,000 copies. By the way, almost half of this volume were cabriolets with its own index E64, but in our country such cars, produced strictly with a soft top, did not gain much popularity. At the time of writing, for example, out of 110 cars for sale on Avito, there were only 7 convertibles, or less than 10% of the total volume. Folk wisdom, telling about the difficulties of finding an unbeaten BMW, in the case of the 6 is quite relevant. Though it is necessary to note that the price and rarity of the model still leave chances for success. For ambitious youth there are variants more popular, more compact and, the main thing, cheaper. Large coupe was often chosen as a weekend car, though the line of motors still provokes to feats. In general, it is worth to begin the examination of 6 Series not even with a body, but with the check of accident history, for example. With the help of Autoteca and only then, having made sure that there are no large insurance payments in the history, proceed to the inspection of the body. It here is quite tricky on the set of materials. The basis, of course, is steel, but the doors and hood are aluminum, and the front fenders and trunk lid are made of plastic. Accordingly, it is worth assessing the condition of paintwork with these features in mind. You can look for the usual rust on the sills, suffering from sandblasting, and rear arches, as well as around the windshield. Aluminum doors and hood do not save from problems. Corrosion centers give themselves out by swelling of paint. Well, front wings can have defects in the contact zone with the bumper, as well as rear ones. The bottom, by the way, also should be inspected for damages. Ground clearance of 140 mm with a large width and wheelbase sometimes leads to embarrassments. Closed body does not mean complete absence of problems with tightness of the interior and trunk. Frameless doors are demanding to the condition of seals, and a panoramic hatch, though it is not sliding, but only raised, can cause both knocking and leaks. Moisture in a salon is extremely undesirable in view of potential problems with electrics, which are not cheap in BMW. Though for the trunk dryness is important for the same reasons, because here the battery is located. At that, water leaks into the trunk not only because of the same problems with seals, but also through the lanterns, especially if they were unsuccessfully put after removal. Well, and in the very niche of the accumulator, because of which the 6 does not even have a rollerboard, there should be no consequences of water stagnation or electrolyte leakage. In convertibles, it is necessary to examine additionally the compartment, in which the roof is folded. It should be dry and relatively clean there too. Well, it is better to drive E63 skillfully and carefully after purchase. The cost of body parts and optics disposes to it. For example, the hood costs over 100,000, bumper, more than 50, windshield, from 30, and xenon headlight, even not adaptive, will cost 70,000. What is there a headlight, one front turn signal, made separately from it, will cost 15,000. And all the blame is almost complete absence of non-original substitutes for all of the above. Unless you manage to find non-factory glass, but everything else in case of an accident, you will have to either look for it at foreign dismantlers or buy it for a lot of money. The suspension of the 6 will not let you relax during the inspection either. Schemes here are independent, multi-lever behind and transverse levers in front, and they are made not dual, which increases the number of replaceable elements and increases the cost of potential repair. Original levers cost 8 to 12,000 per piece, non-original ones, from 3 to 8, so that the reassembly of the neglected running gear can greatly undermine the family budget. And this is not to mention expensive solutions like an active stabilizer of transverse stability, which in an assembly costs $100,000. Of course, not everything costs terrible money. For example, a non-original front hub complete with bearing starts from $2,500 rubles, and stabilizer struts from 500 rubles. But the price of inattention can be high. With brakes, the situation is simpler. If the calipers are not sour without maintenance, and the lines are intact, the consumables cost relatively little money. Even original brake discs cost $6,000 to $8,000 per piece, and a set of decent pads can be bought for $3,000 to $5,000. Structurally, there is no expensive know-how like Mercedes-Benz's SBC system, but in the steering as an option was offered an active rack with variable force. Those who want to get the maximum drive should not save on its inspection and maintenance. If the usual rack even in the original version costs about $120,000, and the restored one can be bought for $50,000 to $60,000, the active rack is more than $200,000. Fortunately, repair is also mastered for it, and it will be about half the price. An important difference of the E63 coupe from the related 5 was the absence of all-wheel drive. These cars were exclusively rear-wheel drive. That, however, does not save buyers from the need to check the condition of the cardan and drives. The first is too expensive not to pay attention to it, and the second tears off banally, especially with powerful motors. Additionally, load can be funny starts with a manual gearbox, which was offered for 6, and even pieces are found in sale on the secondary market. Mechanics from GetRag is quite strong and reliable, and taking into account the class of the car, you can even count on relatively low mileage and good residual resource. The most expensive consumable here, as you can guess, is not a clutch, but a dual-mass flywheel with a 6-figure price tag. An alternative from Luke will save a few tens of thousands of rubles, but in general, in addition to the general condition of the box, it is the flywheel that should be paid close attention to. There are 2 automatic transmissions for E63, classic automatics from ZF and robotized box SMG. The last one, however, is found only on M6, and it is impossible to buy such car for $1 million, so all attention can be paid to usual automatics. 3 variants of 6-speed 6 HP were used here: 6 HP 19 with inline 6s, 6 HP 26 with V8 and diesels before restyling, and 6 HP 28 with the same after restyling. In general, the 6 HP family is quite successful, though a little less resourceful than the previous 5 HP. Here, as always, much depends on the style of operation and quality of service. Changing oil every 50,000 and rare passing can promise 200,000 kilometers of mileage before repair, and service according to the manual, and driving, as on BMW, will finish the automatic twice faster. Now, when the mileage of the majority of cars has long passed over 100,000, it is worth to approach diagnostics especially carefully, and also to save 100,500 rubles in advance for potential repair. From the entire engine range of the 5th series, the 6 did not get only 4-cylinder units. All the rest of the range was transferred from the 5. However, the coupe did not get reliable engines of M54 series. The basic gasoline motors were 6s N52 before restyling and N53 after it. And these are already modern BMW motors in all senses. Powerful and technological, but hot, complicated, and not very resourceful. High working temperatures together with aggressive style of driving usually limit resource at the mark of not more than 200,000. And oiling can begin much earlier. In addition, on heavy coupe they were often squeezed out all juices, so it is not worth to count on high residual life. On the N53, direct injection has been added to these nuances. Here, both fuel injectors and injectors, as well as ignition modules, are at risk. Additionally complicates the search of 6 with the base motor their rarity. 6-cylinder versions make only about 30% of the secondary market, and most of it is formed by cars with V8. V8 motors are representatives of the N62 family with the volume of 4.4 and 4.8 liters. The first, by the way, is found only before restyling, and the second remained with the E63 from the beginning to the end of its production. For these motors, in principle, all the same disadvantages that for inline 6s are fair: high operating temperature, tendency to ring clogging and oil loss, as well as the increased cost of maintenance. Well, and transportation tax of 50 to 55,000 rubles, of course. However, due to the fact that V8 motors are more widely represented in the market than others, the following factors are not the most important. The 3-liter diesel M57 can be considered a good option in terms of life and reliability. It's quite old and relatively simple. Even the block here is cast iron, not aluminum. Of course, fuel equipment is not cheap. Maintenance of successful chain timing will be rather expensive, and the turbine sooner or later will ask for money, but against the background of gasoline units, diesel is just an outlet for someone who wants to drive the 6 for a long time. True, there are two questions here. Firstly, if diesel seems to be a forced but decent option for 5, then diesel coupe is a frank marriage of convenience. And secondly, so in due time the well-to-do buyers of E63 thought so diesel cars are a peace commodity. For example, at the moment of writing the material there were only 3 diesel cars out of 110 cars on sale. Well, now, having briefly found out why the choice of E63 coupe is so difficult, let's try to form a portrait of the optimal copy. Actually, this is quite a difficult task as well. As we have already realized, the best choice in the long term is a diesel, but there are almost no cars with it. Cars with gasoline 6s are often let down by the price. They are cheaper than V8 variants, and they are increasingly bought by those who can no longer afford quality service. So, choosing the best car for $1 million, you will have to lay down the sum for diagnostics and future repair, having stopped on a coupe with V8. There's still a chance of finding a well-maintained car from a wealthy and responsible owner like this if you break the piggy bank and add another 200,000 to 300,000, you can look for rare copies from the first owner. For example, this car inspires hope that in the next few years it can be only qualitatively serviced, receiving in return the maximum of what Bavarian engineers put into it. In conclusion, the decision to invest in a BMW 6 Series II E63 for $1 million rubles ultimately hinges on personal values and priorities. While the allure of luxury and performance is undeniable, the costs associated with ownership, maintenance, insurance, and fuel can add up quickly. It's essential to weigh these financial considerations against the emotional satisfaction and driving experience the car offers. If you find that the joy of owning this iconic vehicle outweighs the expenses, then it may very well be worth the investment. However, if practicality and budget are your main concerns, it might be wise to explore other options. Ultimately, the choice is yours, and it should reflect both your passion for driving and your financial reality.